Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning, good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have a great discussion today because I'm talking with a fellow podcaster. So we're going to have a lot of conversation about why it is such an important business tool. But my guest today has done several other things too that are pretty interesting. So please join me in welcoming Olivia Atkin to our program today. Welcome, Olivia. How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited to be here with you and talk all things podcasting, but also life, business, all the things that shape us and how we show up.
Right. I love it. I love it. Well, let me tell folks a little bit about you and then we'll jump in. So Olivia Atkin is a podcast strategist, an entrepreneur, and host of Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin. Her podcast is globally ranked in the top 5% of podcasts, reaching listeners across all 7 continents. I don't know if I have anybody in Antarctica. I'm jealous. She is the founder of Achieving Success LLC, where she helps clients launch, optimize, and grow high-performing podcasts and secure guest spots on top shows through strategy, SEO, and streamlined workflows. Olivia is also the founder of Turn 2 Designs, an apparel branding company that supports the U.S. Coast Guard community. With a background in business and an MBA in supply chain, she blends strategy with execution to drive real results. A published author and TEDx speaker, Olivia empowers others to use their voice to build authority, impact, and success. So again, Olivia, welcome.
Thank you.
Well, you've done an awful lot in your short career. And I look at this and I think, oh, I'm old enough to be your mother. But tell us a little bit more about how it is that you got to where you are today.
I think, like I mentioned earlier, everything shapes how we show up. And for me, that really goes back to when I was 9 years old. To paint a picture, I was training for the Junior Olympics in swimming. I was competing against 18-year-olds and beating them in everything.
Nice.
And overnight, one day, I was diagnosed with a rare form of epilepsy, and my whole world changed. I went from being a competitive swimmer, getting straight A's in elementary school, being the cool kid, right, to overnight, being told you might not have 6 months of normal brain functionality left until you need like 24-hour support, right? So I went from the highest place you can be in a sport that you're passionate about, for example, to not even being able to swim, trying to figure that out, trying to figure out what does school and education look like? What does, I would start losing all my friends. And when we finally got her told after months that hey, this is just getting worse and she might not be able to have a normal life come middle school. It was in that moment that I looked around. I was like, what? What's the
what the heck?
And yeah. And my parents, who are doctors, knew okay, no, there's other options. We're getting even more opinions. And they found the best neurologist in the country and actually in the world on epilepsy for children. And there was really a time where I understood you either fight and show up and you define your path, or you let the circumstances define you. And that then shaped everything and how I showed up for years. I am, to this day, you tell me no, and I'm like, okay, now watch me.
Hold my beer.
Yeah. I'm like, if I've gotten over that, and not only gotten over it, but I have a degree or certification in every business area. I worked in professional sports as one of the youngest employees, managed pro athletes, then went back and did an MBA program in 2 semesters, right? I got a degree and certification, a degree and 2 minors out of 3 separate schools within my university in undergrad in 3.5 years. And I managed 2 of our D1 hockey programs. I was in Greek life. I founded multiple business societies on our campus, and then went on to work in these professional spaces that, if you look at professional sports, for example, you're talking 12 years ago now, almost. I was in that space, a time where there weren't a lot of females,
Right.
especially
females
females
your age.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a lot of barriers I had to break through, not just because I was a female, but I was the same age, if not younger, than the athletes coming in the door. So then there was the dynamic of, okay, well, we have the assistant who's in her 60s, and we have you actually working directly with the players, and you're the same age, and you have to become very close to them.
Right.
So how are we going to handle that and this and that? To then going and getting my MBA, which I did in 2 semesters, went on to work for Lockheed Martin, and where
Which
this
is very
really,
male dominated.
again, yes, very male dominated. I went in and I got a role that takes the previous person who at the time was still the manager of my department, was the only person working that department for the past 21 years. And he was about to be 31 years in with the company and was getting ready to retire. Right? So very old school himself, very male dominant in general, that company. And so there was a different level. But during the time I worked at Lockheed Martin, I was working there. I was there for 3 years. I ended up writing my book during that time, my first book. I now have 2 out. And then I also, I was volunteering with these nonprofits and these business organizations, but I also was asked to teach a course on career development. And fast forward towards the end of my tenure at Lockheed, I decided to no longer go back and teach. But this idea of, okay, well, I'm talking to all these students, I'm mentoring all these students, I'm going and speaking in these rooms about career development and my career path, which is so unique to so many people. But it really underlines you get to shape how you show up every day, and taking the opportunities, and not just like business opportunities, but the opportunity to get that certification and understand why it's important for maybe not right now, but 5-10 years down the line, you might need it. And I was like, okay, well, whether I'm at Lockheed, people keep coming up to me asking for this advice when I'm teaching, when I'm going to these talks. And at that point, I was no longer teaching anymore. And I was like, how can I continue to have these conversations and add value and make sure people know they're not alone on their journey? Your journey can completely pivot as many times as you want. And that can be a superpower to your longevity of life and career success and all these things. And I was like, and my publishing company, when I just wrapped up the book, had brought up, which that book launched July 2022. And when we did the wrap-up party, they said to me, Olivia, have you ever thought about starting a podcast? And
you went,
like, I was like, no. And also, the project manager of my book talked about that. We've talked about this on podcasts and things like that, is I looked her dead in the face and I was like, Linnell, you do realize I'm working 40 plus hours?
Right. You want me to do something else?
Yeah. I sit on 2 business international boards. I'm president of a state board. I advise 3 university campuses for Kappa Alpha Theta. And at the time, I hadn't left teaching yet. It was summer, so I was going to be going to fall.
You had a little break.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I looked at her and I said, and I was just wrapping up getting my last certification. So at that point, when I finished that, I'd have a degree or certification in every business area. I looked at her and I said, you know, I do all this stuff, right? And it'd be a conversation that if they had a podcast division, which I did ask in real time,
Right.
and they had it, I'd be open to exploring it. But I was like, you do realize at the time I was single. And I was like, one day I'd like to be married,
Right.
what I need to,
Have a social life.
yeah. And what I need to get there is to have some free time
Yes.
to like find someone. And so I looked at her, I said, nope. And, a month later, I decided not to go back and teach. But this idea of how can I use my voice, my knowledge, what I share
You
with
had free
anyone.
time.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, I got some free time now. And so I started diving into podcasting and what that would really look like and what it would really expect of me. And everything I kind of teach in that first book of like do informational interviews. I did them with the best of the best in the space, and not just the surface level, really understanding how does it work, why this works, why
Right.
doesn't this work, doing all the research. And then 2 months later, November 1st, 2022, I launched my podcast and my business. Within 30 days, the podcast organically was in 8 countries and had over 300 views. And I was hating my life at Lockheed, and I was like, here's this opportunity. So end of March 2023, I left Lockheed, which was a blessing because I was actually part of the mass layoffs that happened. Oh, and however, though, a lot of other departments were trying to pick me up. My department had cuts, but I was like, I'm loving podcasting and helping other people use their voice and this and that. And the consulting side really came out of originally I was like, oh, I'll just do career development consulting. I've been
Right.
doing that. Easy peasy. But people with the growth of my podcast and everything else very quickly was like, the conversations you're having on your podcast is so amazing. How can I have other podcasts? Like be a guest on other podcasts like that? How can I grow mine? How can I start one? And I was like, I could really help people this way. So went into doing podcast consulting, left flat, and I looked back now and I'm like, Lockheed gave me the push that I wouldn't have done for myself at that time.
Right.
And I gave myself, I told my parents 4 months. Well, I originally told them 3 because they're like, Olivia, you're getting other job offers. It's
Right.
during COVID.
Olivia, how are you
massively-
going to eat? How are you going to?
Yeah. And they're like, you're getting job offers while all these companies are laying people off. Like, take it. And I was like, I told them, give me 3 months. Then 3 months, the business isn't making some form of money. I knew I wasn't going to be making my salary at Lockheed Martin.
Right. Yeah, that was a little chunk.
Yeah, that would be unrealistic. But if it was showing some growth, I would keep with it.
Right.
If it wasn't, like, okay. And now in my head, I said, okay, my severance package, I was able to get my same salary, everything for 6 months. So I was like,
You were okay. You weren't going to
I was
starve.
like, right. I was like, I'll really give myself 4 months, not 3, but I'll tell them 3 and then 4. And within those 4 months, the business started taking off. Every month it was doing better and better. And again, very strategically, I set up my business. So it worked. And 4 years later, still here, still kicking. And yeah,
And doing
that's it.
so many things. I love it. You know,
Thank
I thought I was an overachiever, and then I listened to your story. I think it's the red hair for, those who are just listening. We both, we're both redheads, which is, I tell people, there is something to the redhead gene of overachieving and type A and all of those things. But, you said something that I have to go back to just quickly. You said D1 hockey. I'm from Colorado. Shout out to the Pioneers who just won the Frozen Four. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun watching hockey. And so love the Pioneers. But as you were talking, one of the things that I was thinking about was the fact that, we mentioned several times, you were a young female in a very male-dominated world. And that's a challenge, especially in sports where you're dealing with those egos, right? And all of those things. And you have a webinar series called Authentically Achieving Your Mix. And so how do you mix still being authentic with being professional? Because it gets really hard, especially as a female, to not be taken seriously. Oh, honey, right? You know, or they think you're the secretary or whatever it is. And so how do you mix authenticity and professionalism?
So I think that goes back to how you show up, right? And I am proud of the fact, you know, a lot of people, I'm going to say this first. A lot of people use that as like, oh, well, I'm a woman in a male dominated space, or this is that, as in, I won't necessarily say an excuse,
I
but
was
as
thinking
a,
that word.
yeah, as that like, well, this happens to me, right? I look at it as it is a badge of honor. It is a badge of honor for me to be like, guess what? Yeah, I was. And that shaped how I show up now. So if you don't like it, get out
You're
of
not
the
my
room.
people.
Right. But I also use it, like, even to this day, right? Going back to it, I had to deal my first real job out. Well, I started while I was in college, but I walk in the door and I'm working for a top NFL team. And I'm not just dealing with the woman aspect, and there not being a lot of women in the space. And I will give it to the New York Giants. They had women in the front office.
Right.
But there was a almost 20-year age gap between me and the next female. And the females that at the time did have a leadership role, not just an assistant role, leadership role, were people who got those roles. And I'm not trying to say this any kind of way, I'm just stating a fact. One of them got it because her father played for the teams year earlier. And then once she finished her MBA and she finished all this stuff, so she was in her late, almost 30,
and
when
she had
even
an
started.
entree. I mean, that's the thing, which nobody should, should say anything bad about. We've all used that on occasion, right?
Yeah. And so, you know, or they were a spouse of a former player, and years after he retired, the relationship was still there with the team. They'd support the team. Okay, we want to offer you this position. So not only was I dealing with that aspect of being a female and in that role, I'm now the same age, if not younger.
Right.
And so now there's also the age dynamic. And so for me, at that very beginning, it was showing like I deserved the seat at the table, and you're going to hear what I have to say. And I'm very grateful that because I showed up authentically myself, it's like, this is how I talk.
Right.
This is what my opinions, like it, don't like it. And trust me, there were things I had to learn along the way.
Right.
And I had amazing mentors within the organization that when it was time and I stepped into talking and I shouldn't have been talking, they'd like take me aside afterwards and was like, Olivia, that wasn't your place. You shouldn't have joined into that conversation, right? And they tell me the why behind it.
Here's why you should have just listened.
Right. And then there were times too where like it's the heat of summer and I'm 5 foot wearing a business attire dress, and my boss pulls me in and he's like, hey, that's inappropriate. I'm like, wait, it's down to my knees.
Right.
Isn't that? And he's like, it could give the wrong message. And you should just, if you're gonna wear a dress, wear something really baggy. And I'm like, however, like I'm 5 foot, then the clothes will be wearing me.
Right.
Like that doesn't really work. So that was an example where I said, okay, you know what? If this is what the conversation's going to be, suits. I don't care. Even in summer, every day after that. And that was my within the first year, first 6 months of me working at the New York Football Giants. I wore a suit the rest of my tenure, 8 years with the team every single day. Because I was like, okay, well, now you don't have that to talk about. So you can only talk about my work. Going into working at Lockheed Martin, kind of same thing. I had that point, I worked for a team for a really long time. I managed athletes. I'd still get calls from certain very well-known athletes while I was in the office at times. So like people were seeing certain names pop up on my phone and they knew my background. And so there was a level of, first of all, they had nothing to worry about me saying something out of term because I had to really protect my athletes.
Right.
So
you were not the name dropper.
Right. And I wasn't, the reason to this day, I have some of my best friends are former pro athletes, and athletes are because they know I'm going to say exactly what I think about whatever they ask me about. Good, bad, we'll work through it.
Right.
But some of them will even say, like, Olivia, you're never getting rid of me. A business decision, career decisions, everything. They will come to me and be like, hey, what is your thought on this? So at Lockheed, it was a little different. My main issue was, again, being a female in the male space.
Right.
But then it was a very different industry. So obviously I had things to learn, but it kept going back to other people's insecurities that someone so young could be doing the role.
Right.
So now in this phase, I also had that dynamic again, but it'd be like, okay, well, you're going to hear what I have to say. And I reverted back to that of like, okay, again, you're going to hear what I have to say. And guess what? If I sat in that room for 8 years, you don't think I could do this job really easy? And there was a lot of things that, because at that time I had a degree certification in almost every business area, I had a very different understanding of how things should go than, for example, my boss, who did not have that background.
Right. Who'd only been in that industry forever.
And there were times I'd push. Well, where's the training, the protocol, the process, the procedure, everything broken down because I'm new. You're saying I made a mistake. Well, where's the training on it?
Happy to learn.
How do I know? So, then that got flipped. Olivia, you're going to rate every training.
Yeah. Okay, we don't have it, so.
Yep. So that was fun. But then it was also like, one of his last few weeks there, he even made the comment to give you perspective of an issue arose. And we're in a team. It's me, him, and 2 contractors trying to figure it out that had been working on our team for a really long time. And we're all in the office, and me and him are kind of kitty cornered in our cubicle little space. And I turn around and I'm like, well, what if we did this? And he looks at me, he smiles, and he goes, Olivia, I'll never listen to a woman's input. The only woman I'll listen to is Stephanie, who's the boss's boss, who signs his check.
Oh.
And he's like, and I have to. And I said, okay. And no other man, either other man said anything. And after the fact, I laughed and I'm like, okay, we'll see who has the last laugh on this one.
Because you're not going to win right then.
Right. And so then I pulled both other men aside and we had a little lesson on, if you don't say something, then this is the culture that you are saying is acceptable. And
it's not that they're standing up for you. It's that they're standing up for the situation.
And we had a very coming to Jesus moment about how you should respond in moments. And then I went to HR because at the time he was trying to get the best retirement package he could get. And I knew that. And I went to them and I said, I want you to know this is the conversation that just transpired. And we went into detail. And he did not end up getting the best retirement package he could have gotten, because now that was documented as like real time. And so when I left there, I understand a very different side of corporate. I also understood that at the end of the day, when you work in certain industries, certain environments, when you're a part of certain environments, right? Because as you mentioned too, I own a second company now called Turn 2 Designs, which is a apparel company for U.S. Coast Guard members and their families. And that is something I'm very proud of, because I am a Coast Guard spouse myself. And that really came out of, I have this knowledge.
Right.
Let me share it. Let me provide something that you guys want, very acceptable cost, and give back. But even being in that, you know, going from Lockheed and understanding military things from a certain perspective to then being a military spouse, there is a level that you still have to know your place, how to, and that's still learning curve for me. I'm still learning some of these things, because but even Turn 2, there is a level of it of who we serve are certain demographic and the people I interact with, right? And for me, they're predominantly men. I give high respect to every person who serves, man, women, I don't care. I see it firsthand all the time. I see how it affects families, spouses, utmost respect to anyone. But I also have a very different perspective now, as well as someone who, and I'll say it like this, I've worked in the industries where, in the times where there weren't really women at the table. And I broke that glass ceiling. And I wear that as a badge of honor that I was able to do it and make it easier for the next female to come in. I own 2 businesses now. I wear that with a badge of honor. And I try to show up equally for everyone, and represent everyone in each space. I will also say I have the different perspective now, is because I see women in the Coast Guard, and I see them knowing that, like, it's amazing. More and more women are coming in, but also understanding the women that use it for good and the women who misuse it. And I have said to some higher ups who I've gotten to know really well, and females, and I'm like, my tolerance for misusing your stance on being a female in a male dominated space,
It is
and you
not a
understand,
dating platform.
right? But misunderstanding your, for example, loose allegations or words you throw around because you internally know that's not true, but you're trying to climb the ladder, whatever it might be. To me, I'm like, or you do something like it's the dating pool and right and all that. And I'm like, do you understand what you are now doing for the next woman that's trying to come in?
Yeah.
Like, understand that weight. So my time, it's like a double-edged sword. I've been there, but my tolerance for it also is like, when you do it right, highest respect for you. When you try, and even in pro sports, I'll see stuff people will reach out to me about. I'm like, when you do it wrong, like that, it's over.
Right. Yeah. You know, and so many things there. You know, it's interesting because I was thinking, you know, about attire, right? And you know, years ago, and you know, I mentioned I'm old enough to be your mother, and so when I first went into the workplace, it was very male oriented. We're not going to say how old I am, you know, it's not the dark ages, but yeah, it was still very male oriented. And so it was a challenge. I mean, I was a lobbyist for several years, you know. Now I only got honeyed once, and he patted the top of my head. He didn't touch me anywhere else. He just patted me on top of the head and he called me honey. And now I know I cannot say anything right then, right? You know, he is a senator. But I said something to the men that I work with, and they had a quiet conversation with him, and he apologized. And luckily he only patted the top of my head. Otherwise I probably would have been arrested because I would have smacked him. But things like that. But attire. I mean, I remember one time I was working in a marketing agency and we had an opening and this young woman came in and it was her first job out of really high school that she was applying for. It was a receptionist position.
Mhm.
And she spent the whole time pulling her skirt down and pulling her top up because her top was too low cut and her skirt was too short. And you could tell it was making her very self-conscious. And so we didn't give her the position for a variety of reasons. That did not play into it, but she asked me later, she said, in essence, hey, you're old. Can you give me advice? But more, she was asking me to be a mentor. Right. And so I thought about it because I thought, and then I talked to her a little bit and I said, okay, your resume had typos. There were, there were several things like that were the reason that she was not hired. But I said, I have to tell you, your attire was an issue. I said, because it was very distracting. And I said, first of all, do you want to get the job and then think, did I only get the job because I showed a little cleavage and a lot of leg?
Mhm.
And that had never occurred to her. But what she told me, and this was very enlightening, she said, I can't afford to buy anything else. And I said, honey, I'm not talking Gucci suit. I'm talking Goodwill and a consignment store. Kohl's on sale. I don't even know. Kohl's might not have existed then. JCPenney on sale, right? And I said, you can get, a suit that looks very professional, but you're not worried about the girls showing.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what happened to her. But yeah, I've worked with women who you did wonder, did they get their promotions because? And I know there were some that did. But yeah, it is always something where we have to, it's continually a fight
Mhm.
and to get where we are without getting that B word attached to us. And so it's showing, that, hey, I'm smart. I know this. I can do this. And, and it is something that is perfectly acceptable to be able to do that. But there were times where same thing. I was told, you should have not spoken out then. you know, and I said, okay, tell me why, right?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, we're in the podcast space now, right?
yeah,
I speak for a living
right.
all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh yeah,
So it's worked. It's
yeah,
worked out.
yep, and so yeah, I'm like, okay. But yeah, there, it is tricky sometimes. But I also, I mentor a young woman who is a college freshman. And I'm always sending her inspirational sayings. And bless her, she tells me, oh, yeah, my grandma sends me those too. And I knew she didn't mean it in a negative way. I thought, oh, that was very sweet, right? But I send her a lot of things to help motivate her. And she wants to go into a fairly male dominated field. And I said, you're going to find, and she's like you, she's petite, she's very cute. And I said, you've got to establish right at the very start that you are smart. And I said, without being that B word, you are smart and you are competent, and they wouldn't have hired you otherwise. And so hopefully that's something that we all are remembering is, yeah, we got hired because we could do the job, not because we were going to do something else. And so, but and it's just it is like what you say about podcasting. We we get to say more about what we are because it's it's our venue, it's our platform, but we still do it in a way that is professional. And I've cried on podcasts, and I don't 20 years ago I would have thought, oh my God, that's horrible, how embarrassing. No, it's appropriate to show our feelings. And I mean, back to, my comment about, the Denver Pioneers winning the biggest hockey thing, right?
Mhm.
The goalie could almost not be interviewed because he was in tears. and then he dropped the F-bomb, so it was really funny. But men are learning that they can show emotion, and it's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But you do have this great podcast. I'm going to call it an empire. You've got a great podcast empire.
I'm trying.
I know you're, it's not that you're getting there. You are there, right? We're manifesting it. But one of the things you talk about is we can all have a podcast, and we've all been interviewed on those podcasts. We've all listened to those podcasts, and it's just the podcast. But how do you make it a strategic podcast?
I think that's a great question, and something so many people don't think about, especially in a time where if you're a business owner, 9 times out of 10, as you're scrolling on social media, you'll probably get a sponsored ad or something about podcasting or any aspect of business where it's like, here's the golden ticket. I call it the golden ticket of like, just do this and you can make 6-7 figures very easily. And one of the big things this past year and a half I've seen even more is the aspect of just start a podcast and you'll get all
free.
This
it's easy.
Yeah, it's easy. It's free. Well, it's not.
Yeah.
And that's what and that's why 94% of podcasters don't make it past 20 episodes, which for those trying to do quick math, if you release 1 episode a week, it's 6 months. Well, why is that? And that is because you're hearing just start a podcast, just do it, just take the action, right? And there's nothing wrong. And I'm a big believer that once you decide to do something or you think it's going to be a good thing to do, take the action, start getting it done.
It's never going to be perfect. Don't wait.
Right. Exactly. And that's why in my circles, a lot of people joke and be like, oh, Olivia gets this idea in your head and 2 months later. I mean, it took me less than 2 months to go from signing my book contract, my very first one with the publishing company, to having a release party for a book.
You are an overachiever.
Less than 2 months, right? And this second book, just because of time and all different things, it took me about 3 months to do it, right? Because once I was like, oh, this is what we're time, let's do it. It was like, okay, now how quickly, but strategically and correctly, can I do this and get it done correctly up to my standards? Podcasting is the same. If you just go into it half-assing it or not understanding the space, you are going to most likely fall into that 94%.
Right.
Where it actually comes strategic, and what I help a lot of people with if they're trying to start and or grow their show or even be a guest, is I start with the question is, what is your goal?
Right.
What's your goal with being a guest? What's your goal with having this podcast? Then we talk about that. And I mean, they'll give me the initial answer and then we're diving way deeper into that. Then from there, we go into, for example, if you're going to host a podcast and start one, or you've had one and you're like, this needs to become a strategic asset.
I got 2 listeners a week and one's my mom.
And it's, what is the strategy? I always ask that. What is your strategy? And they'll go, oh, I don't have one. We just release. And that's where I can tell very clearly just from that question if someone's looking at podcasting as a strategic asset, or it's just that I need to do this. This is something I need to do. Strategy, just like business, will lay out the foundation for your long-term success and what that looks like. So for it to become a strategic asset, you need to give the same thought and process and have the same experts in the room that you would have for your business. And so that looks like creating a strategy where you're figuring out what is the best day to release your podcast episode, how often. Because the other part of this is there is no one size fit all with podcasting.
Right.
And that is the beauty of it, because you are using your voice to make an impact in the world. And when you lead with impact and you use the space of podcasting, it will grow and the money will come. Everything will come. It's just how you're looking at it. And what are you putting into it? And so it's really understanding that if you want it to become a strategic asset, which it 100% can for any podcast out there, even those, what I call the attaboy, where they're sitting just talking about sports, everything's an opportunity, is understanding your why, understanding your goals, and building a strategy behind that that then aligns with it, that is sustainable.
Right. Right. And you're right. So many people, oh, it's the thing to do. Or I know this person who did it. Now you're going to hate this. You're going to hate why I started. So I was a guest and I went, oh, this seems like fun. I can do this. But then I was very strategic. What do I want to do? What do I want to talk about? I mean, it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to launch a podcast and talk to whoever comes my way. Initially, I focused on social media because this was over 10 years ago when social media as a business tool really was first starting. Should I have a Facebook page? What am I doing with LinkedIn? And all of those things. And then I transitioned, because you can only talk about that so much. Then I transitioned into doing a business podcast. Is there an episode now and then that's really not business oriented? Sure, because it's my podcast. I can do what I want with it. But I still find a way to tie in business. So
Exactly.
yeah, I talked with
And there's even, sorry to cut you off, like even being a guest, you should understand, right? And you and I have talked about this.
Right.
What is the purpose of why you're going on podcast? But
Right.
again, going back to your why, going back to your goals. There's probably goals you don't even realize that as a guest is powerful. But I also have a lot of conversations with people who will come to me and be like, I want to get on podcasts. And I'll be like, okay, I can get you. Why? Right? We always have that conversation first, make sure there's alignment. And I'm like, okay, I could get you on podcast, but understand that if you're going to try to sell, this is not the space for you. If that's the way you're going to lead, I'm going to tell you it's not worthwhile. There's times though, I'll get people who come to me who want to be a guest on podcasts, or they'll say, I want to start my own podcast. And we start talking and I will say to them, no. They're like, no. And I'm like, no, what you're telling me right now, the actual best path forward for you, for where you are today and what the next 6 months, a year looks like for you, is really, and it's the first, if they're talking about guessing, it's really building their podcast. Sometimes they come about hosting and it's vice versa, or it's like, hey, it's just not the time for you. And I think that's one of the things that as a podcast consultant, as someone who's been doing this for 4 years, it's not just I don't do coaching programs. I don't do, everything is customized. I do have an amazing platform called the Podcast Growth Partner for people that they can use, whether you're a guest or a host. That is like nothing else out there. But when I do my done for you service, or even get on a strategy call or a networking call, I'm like, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm not here to try to sell you on a program, because guess what? I love podcasting. I love being able to meet new people and have impactful conversations and have even one person listen and really have it resonate with them. And I don't want someone to become part of the stat or be like, oh, podcasting, it's so over glorified. It's really not worth it.
There's millions of them.
Yeah. Like, I want you to walk away and be like, that was the best experience.
Right.
From either side, whether I work with you or not. But let me give you some insight and some education that, to be quite frank, no one else is providing. Because sadly, in the podcasting space right now, especially since COVID, and seeing what it's growing into and what the trajectory of that can be for the next 5-10 years, it has turned into a money grab.
Right.
For a lot of companies, marketers who have no understanding of the space, and it is quite different than any other space, are like, oh, this is easy. We could just, how we get someone in a magazine, we could just do cold email. We'll get it on podcast. Oh, we could do that. And it's like, they're not telling you the reality of it. They're not telling you if you actually fit it and what you fit. They're looking at the dollar sign. And that is what I call the hidden nasty side of podcasting that I
Right.
try to avoid.
And there are some that it's just not a good fit for, both from a guest or from a hosting experience. I've in all of mine, let's see, your episode 1161. I've only had about 2 where it was a challenge for me to get the interview. They wanted to give very short answers, and I kept saying, "Well, tell me more." Right? And they just were not a good guest. I've had people who I am their very first interview, and I take that very seriously because I don't want them to think, "Oh my God, I don't ever want to do this again." Mhm.
So I can't cut you off because I love
all
that
right.
you just said that.
Mhm.
I love, being a Gold Blue Brink show, right? There's a lot of people who are like, oh my God, I must be at this caliber, especially because I regularly have celebrities, actors who are currently in films and stuff like that, and athletes on my podcast. So they immediately think I have to be at this level.
Right.
You're globally ranked, you're all 7 continents. You have these high caliber guests. I must be here. I love, love when someone goes, I think I would be a good fit. And we go through the process and they'll end up signing with me or this or that. And they're like, I'm a little nervous. And I'm like, come on my podcast. Come on mine.
Yeah.
And why I love when one is vulnerable to be like, I haven't been in this room before. Whether they're just being on mine or I'm getting them on others. And I love that because the people who've been around the space a long time and they reach out to you and they've been like, I've been on hundreds or I've been on thousands. There's a tendency for them to use that as an ego leverage. Like I've been on over 200 podcasts as a guest myself in 4 years. I do it because I can share knowledge. I can help another host out. There's all these different reasons. I never, when I'm talking to a host about being a guest, I never say any of that. There's people though who will use it as ego, and there's a lot of people who don't understand even though they've done so many, it's a numbers game to them, and they don't understand the value of doing podcasting with leading with story and impact. And they'll be like, and we've talked about this, here's what I'm going to talk about. And they have it so dwelled down that you don't get the same value from them because
You don't get a
now
conversation.
they're just looking at it as okay, I have to do this task. And here's my talking points. Here's what I'm going to say. And there's no organic flow to it. There's no real impact. It's like they're talking and just recording themselves.
Right. Yeah. Well, I'm an old PR person. That is my background. And I remember when I would have, my bosses or whoever come to me and they would say, what they ran, TV, newspaper, whatever, wasn't what you had sent in. And I would try to explain to them. Public relations is sending a press release, and they get to use what they want, right? If you want it to be exactly the way you want it to be, that's called an ad. And they, sometimes they got it, sometimes they didn't. But yeah, if you want something very, very specific, then you buy time and then you are able to control it. I mean, I've had people, not very often, who have said they want the questions in advance so they can pre-approve them. No, that's not going to happen because I don't know. Because I'm having a conversation with somebody and I might go squirrel. Right now, I'm not going to do gotchas or anything like that. I don't ever want to do anything. But yeah, I mean, like this has happened with you and I. Oh, I just wanted to talk about, right? And so, yeah, I don't have those pre-questions aside from tell us how you got to where you are today. I mean, that is the only pre-question that I do. Everything else is a conversation.
And that's the point. You're having an undivided, no disruption, impactful conversation. That will lead to everything else. That's why in the podcast growth partner platform that I've built, one of the features is a practice interview.
Oh, I love
for
it.
host guests. So a host can go in, whether they're a veteran or you are potentially thinking about starting or you've just started, and practice voice back and forth, or you can type it, a interview where you do an introduction, where you ask questions. You can challenge yourself on how many questions, how hard the guest is to get responses out of, and it will give you real feedback in real time, give you suggestions, give you things to practice. You could go in as many times. Same with guests. A lot of guests come to me and will be like, how can I be a good guest? I don't know this and that, right? And we were even talking about sometimes guests earlier in this conversation. Sometimes guests aren't, the best, or they're too stuck on something. You can go into the platform as a guest and do a mock interview and type your answers or speak your answers exactly how you would say it. There's going to be something acting as the host on the other side. And then it's very specific to you and what you want to talk about, all the things from either side, and you will get real feedback. You can ask that question and it'll say, you went on too long. For this type of podcast, you have to be shorter, or it needs a more story, and give you that real feedback, and then a full report. And that's just one of the features in the platform. But that one, I'm also very excited about, because it is something that's going to help a lot of people. I mean, all of it.
I have an hour, so people can talk longer. I've done interviews where I have been the guest and it's a 15-minute. It's really hard for me, but I know, okay, I can't expound forever. I need to just be short and sweet. I don't like those because that's not me. I am chatty Kathy. And so, and that is part of figuring out, hey, I want to be a guest on so-and-so's podcast. Whether they are telling the truth or not, when somebody says, hey, I listen to your podcasts, I like that, because then they're going to, now granted, they're probably, they might've listened to 5 minutes worth and thought, okay. But yeah, if they've listened, they know that I'm going to really have a conversation. I tell people I don't have a edit. I leave in the uhs, the ums, the you knows, because it's a conversation.
So one thing I will also say, because the practice we were just talking about, a guest or a host can use, and a guest or a host can also use on the platform what's called as the research tab, which I love this tab because you can put in any podcast in there, and the link to that podcast, and it will give you like the podcast name, the description of the show, how many episodes, how often they release. Then it'll provide that host contact information, and it will tell you it has an assessment, like based on it. Well, first it'll tell you like, okay, Deb, this is her show style. This is this, that, and the next, and give you this whole analysis, right? Then there's a fit button. It's called the fit button. And you put in the brand you've created as a host or guest, right? And you hit fit me. And when it does that, it's going to populate for a minute from all the information it has about you, all the information about that specific podcast. And then it's going to say fit assessment, 8 out of 10, and tell you exactly why, specifically based on your expertise, how you speak, all that you are actually a fit or not. And if you're going to be a fit, this is what you would need, the style of show. So you need to be able to talk about stories. You need to be able to do. And so the great thing is there's no kind of guesswork, I should say, on like, I like the show, but would it really align? Okay, we'll take the fit assessment and literally hit the button, and within a minute and a half, you're going to have such a deep dive of whether this is the right fit, and you should even spend the time and reach out to that host or not. And then if you're like, yeah, you get to populate a custom email to then send to the host. Not that standard, like, oh, like,
I listened to your podcast and your guest so-and-so was such a great interview.
Yeah.
Okay, at least tell me what we talked about.
It's going to go into, why, the why behind it. And then you can email it to that host. And then there's other strategies of like, okay, this is what you want to talk about. Maybe approach it this way. And then there's, I'll quickly say this, for hosts as well, there is an analyzer tab. So you can put in a recording like we're doing right now, and put in the information that you need to. And then it will populate your titles, descriptions, based on your
Mhm.
goals with
Mhm.
your podcast
Mhm.
and what will perform the best.
Mhm.
It will also populate a thank you email to that
Mhm.
guest. It will populate the
Mhm.
best social media posts so
Mhm.
that the episode can get
Mhm.
traction. It will populate um a s- a sponsorship
Mhm.
monetization.
Mhm.
So like, do you want to sponsor this episode or
Mhm.
podcast? Here are ideas.
Mhm.
Here who you would
Mhm.
attract, why you would attract them. There's
Mhm.
template emails you could
Mhm.
copy and post, an email blurb.
Mhm.
So like if you have an email distribution list, you
Mhm.
can send it out
Mhm.
about that
Mhm.
podcast, a blog post.
Mhm.
And what I also love
Mhm.
about this is it creates
Mhm.
in real time based on
Mhm.
that conversation.
Mhm.
Here's additional ideas. So if you want to follow up with that
Mhm.
guest and have them back
Mhm.
on, you
Mhm.
didn't really talk about this, but it could be interesting.
Right.
Or
Yeah. Mhm.
if you want a
Mhm.
similar guest,
Mhm.
here's some things you could
Mhm.
talk about
Mhm.
that would be really interesting.
Mhm.
Best time
Mhm.
and day to release, all
Mhm.
that. And then there's the prep,
Mhm.
which within minutes of
Mhm.
putting in the guest bio
Mhm.
or solo
Mhm.
episode panel, whatever it might be, it is giving you your
Mhm.
intro, your outro, your
Mhm.
questions to ask,
Mhm.
all the things to really drive
Mhm.
an impactful conversation,
Right.
your timelines. And
Mhm.
then there's the compare tab where you
Mhm.
can compare your podcast or
Mhm.
any two podcasts
Mhm.
to them, see what
Mhm.
you're doing versus the
Mhm.
other person,
Mhm.
what's working, what's
Mhm.
not, why, so
Mhm.
you understand
Mhm.
it, and episode to episode.
Mhm.
So I can take two of my own episodes and go, well, why did this one perform better than
Mhm.
that one?
Right. Mhm.
And really
Mhm.
understand that. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of amazing things that,
Right.
to me, the way I've shown up and help
Mhm.
others in my custom
Mhm.
work now allows anyone to
Mhm.
use it and in
Mhm.
such a fun way.
Right.
So thank you for letting me go on
Yeah.
about that.
Oh, no, I love that because I think that's the biggest thing that holds people back is that lack of information. And folks, you're not a good fit for every podcast. I'm not. I mean, I was sharing before the program, I'm a guest on quite a few podcasts and we do pre-interviews and things like that. And I've been turned down. And I went,
Mhm.
Okay. It didn't hurt my ego. It didn't, I went on to whatever else I was doing that day because we're not friends with everybody. We're not going to date everybody. We're not going to have, I mean, all of those things. There's just times where it's not a good fit and we don't ever want to force it because
Mhm.
even just listening to a podcast, you can tell when one side or the other isn't into it.
Mhm.
Just like I don't know why I'm thinking about this. I've been married for 33 years. Like when you're standing in a bar, right? And you're listening to two people talk. And I think there was even a movie, right? She's just not that into you.
Mhm.
And yeah, and that's okay because there are so many other opportunities. You want to focus on the ones that are right and the ones that aren't, okay, whatever.
Yeah, agreed. I say the mic feels and hears everything.
Right.
And so anyone who says I could be on any
Mhm.
podcast
No.
is lying.
Mhm.
And you shouldn't
Mhm.
want to
Right.
be.
Right. Yeah.
When someone
Mhm.
tells me they want to be on every podcast or
Mhm.
they could have any guest,
Mhm.
red flags.
Mhm.
Red flags all
Right.
day.
Right. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a niche, right? You know, you have certain podcasts that you're going to be on to hit the right audience for your message, just as your podcast is going to have a niche for people that it's trying to reach. And it's okay to say, okay, it's got 10 people a week that listen to it. Because if those are the right 10 people, you've hit a home run.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And that's why I also say to people when they ask me about growth path and like getting all these numbers, I go, the saying I say is I'd rather have 50 listeners who listen every single week
Mm-hmm.
to the full length of my episode
Right.
than 1,000 listens
Mm-hmm.
that hit 4 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and then drop off.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because 1,000 people will never convert to anything. They're just
Yeah.
number.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a glorified it's a way for you to say, oh, I have this authority. And to me, that's fake authority because you really don't got anything.
Right.
But it's also, when we talk about a strategic podcast, like we spoke about earlier, is your podcast strategic? Are you paying someone for those listens, right? And that growth, and they're bringing in and having those listens made? And also, what are those listens actually doing for you?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if they're listening for the whole thing, are they doing what it is that you want them to do? Now, if it's, mine is a knowledge-based thing. I just want people to get knowledge. Okay, did they learn something listening to my interview? For me, that's a home run. Now I do like it if they go to the client and, all of those various things. But yeah, it comes back to knowing that why.
Mhm.
Well, oh my gosh, Olivia, speaking of, we are at the top of the hour. So for people who are saying, I need to talk to Olivia, how do they find you and what are the services that you provide?
So I'll start with the services and then
Okay.
how you can find me. I'm gonna reverse it.
That's all right.
So I help people get on the top 10% most listened to podcasts globally as a guest, all custom done for you. I help people go from idea to launch and or grow their podcast. Now, the idea to launch is a standard, like done for you, custom package. The grow your podcast has a plethora of services, including one-on-one strategy calls, podcast audits, doing your titles and descriptions for you. Can look very different based on what that person actually needs. The other thing, in addition to my 2 books that I have, is my amazing, amazing platform where I've pulled all of my intellectual properties, like having me on your screen with you all the time, is my amazing podcast growth partner. And you can go there if you're trying to be a guest, if you're trying to host, grow your show, wherever you might be in the podcast journey. And everything is there that you might need. And so those are the services I provide, and you can get a hold of me through my website, achieving-success.com, where there's info, there's episodes, podcastgrowthpartner.com.
Mhm.
So the podcastgrowthpartner.com will take you directly to that tool. You can also find me by emailing me at olivia.atkin@achieving-success.com or searching my name and finding the podcast Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin on all audio platforms, social media. You can search Achieving Success or Olivia Atkin. I answer every DM email that comes through. So the only thing I do tell people is give me up to 48 to 72 hours.
And
Like
you
if you're
are
going to
in
email,
Juneau, so there is a
yeah,
bit of a time difference.
yeah. So if you're going to email me on a Friday, expect a response on Monday.
Right.
And also,
Mhm.
yes, currently I'm in Juneau. We will be moving back to the East Coast this summer, but I tell all my clients, everyone, because I have clients all over the world, I'm like, just be mindful of time differences.
Right.
So don't be there might be a few hour delay. The great part though is too that sometimes a client will email me or call me about something and it's 9 o'clock their time.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh, it's 5 o'clock. I could talk real fast. Sure.
And they're like, Olivia, it's 9 o'clock.
Yeah, what are you doing? I'm like, I got this.
Mhm. Great. I love it. I love it. I just had the cardinal sin happen. I don't know if you heard it. I had all of a sudden one of my browser tabs started playing music.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my
mean, it
gosh.
happened. It
Yeah.
happened. I heard it
mean,
a little bit, but that's why I
yeah.
repeated the podcast
Yeah.
growth partner. I was like,
I know.
got
You know,
this.
but that is kind of one of the things, folks. Turn your phones off, turn your watches off, all of those various things, whatever it is, it can wait. And I even turn my phone around so that I'm not, right? Because I am
Yeah.
squirrel, right? But yeah, so I have been having so much fun talking with Olivia Atkin of the podcast is Achieving Success with Olivia Atkin, and her business is Achieving Success LLC. We'll have all of those links in the show notes. We'll have you on again because this is such great information. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Use your voice to make an impact, and it can be your biggest superpower, whether that is for your business, a way to be yourself and stand tall. No two people are the same. No two people's journey is the same. And at the end of the day, you get to choose how you use your voice and how you show up.
I love it. I love it. Well, I have been having so much fun. I'm Deb Creer. I've been talking with Olivia Atkin. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.